leave that technical matter to the spreadsheet because it certainly won't be tested. Now, for ranges of practices and issues in economic capital from the Basel Committee, as I mentioned before, there's really no way around the fact that this is just a list of some qualitative issues in the economic capital implementation framework. Challenges that appear, including the difficulty in defining risk measures, aggregating risk, validating models, dependency modeling, evaluating counterparty credit risk, and assessing interest rate risk in the banking book. There is no singularly preferred risk measure for economic capital purposes. Risk aggregation. There's a challenge, although recall we said that the virtue of economic capital is we can aggregate risk across risk buckets. So that's an advantage, although in practice it's harder, it's easier said than done. If we just consider switching from economic to regulatory capital, because Basel in fact does use VAR across all the buckets, you'll notice implicitly they are somewhat harmonizing on very different or different VAR type metrics. Credit risk 99.9% at 1 year horizon. The market risk is 99%, but only a 10-day horizon. And operational risk is like credit risk. So the different nature of these risk buckets really necessitates different horizons, maybe even confidence levels. And then, although mathematically the aggregation is trivial, doesn't mean that it's economically realistic. Validation of economic capital's models is at a very preliminary stage. Very tricky is the dependency modeling. You'll recall that dependency is the broader term than correlation. Correlation is linear, a linear relationship. So it's a special class of dependency. We use dependency more broadly to include nonlinear relationships. Evaluation of counterparty credit risk is complex. To model counterparty credit risk, banks either use value risk model, or in the FRM at least, we tend to exclusively focus on Monte Carlo simulation as the basis for counterparty credit risk, including the recently added readings of Canabero that are very good on counterparty credit risk. Pretty much that's Monte Carlo simulation. Assessing interest rate risk in the banking book. Where the two main techniques are repricing schedules and simulation approaches. Then the BIS recommendations include, on several categories, use of economic capital models. As always, thematically, it always depends critically on senior management, commitment, and buy-in. Easier said than done. There should be transparency and integration into decision-making. Risk measurement begins with a robust, comprehensive, and rigorous risk identification process, but not all risks can be directly quantified. Risk measures. All risk measures observed in use have advantages and disadvantages which need to be understood within the context of their intended application. Risk aggregation. Economic validation. Model validation should be conducted rigorously and comprehensively. Banks should carefully assess the extent to which the dependency structure they use are appropriate for their portfolio. Counterparty credit risk and interest rate risk in the banking book. And then there are constraints imposed and opportunities offered by economic capital in the areas of credit portfolio management, risk-based pricing, customer profitability analysis, and management incentives.